Welcome to the next episode of the ICT Mastery Blueprint. Today, we're going to talk about something very highly requested, and that is daily bias and intraday bias. Now, I'm going to be discussing in this video how I achieve my bias, and I will teach you guys exactly how to do so. And hopefully, you guys can implement something to start using this concept in your own type of trading. Now, this is something I recommend every single person use in their trading because it is a insanely improvable tool that you can use that can very much so improve the probabilities of your trade. I don't like to waste any time, but let me tell you guys very quickly, we're going to go into the details of how I do everything. It's going to be a lot of reading, and I'll talk to you guys directly, and then we're going to go to the charts, and I'm going to do a lot of examples of every single thing I covered. So bear with me while we get to the information components, because you guys need to have the information, and then I'll go through the examples. We'll do it live together, and we'll manage to get through this video. So, daily bias and intraday bias. First things first, what is daily bias? Not wasting any time. It is the concept of determining which direction the daily candle will trade next. So, if today's Thursday, we want to have daily bias for Friday, which means which direction are we likely to trade. Note, very important, we are not trying to pick the highest high of the day. We don't know. It does not matter how high it's going to go. All we need to know is that is it going to go higher or lower. This also comes with the idea that we're not trying to predict the closing price of the daily candle. All we need to know is simply, is this daily candle likely to trade higher or lower? Simply just the direction. Intraday bias is the exact same thing, but pretty much for one session. So let's say you trade the morning session in the New York Eastern Time morning session. You're trying to see, is the session likely to go higher or lower? So intraday meaning price action that's inside that daily candle, not the entire day itself. Again, we're not trying to pick any highs or lows. We don't know what the highest high or the lowest low is, although there are tools you could potentially use this for. That's not what we're getting into this video. We're simply trying to predict the direction. What is the importance? Now, hopefully you guys stick to this component because it's very important. It's very simple. If you have a bias and an idea of where price can go before you frame a trade, if that trade forms in that same direction, you have a higher probability trade. For example, if I came into the day and I'm like, everything is telling me price is going to be bullish, it's going to be expanding higher, and then I see a bullish setup, well, that bullish setup, in my mind, is now higher probability because it also aligns with my idea that, well, price was already going to go higher. If I thought price was going to go higher and I saw a bearish setup, well, I'm not going to trust that bearish setup as much because it's against my bias. Now, you don't always have to trade with your bias, and you don't always need a bias. But when it does align that in that way, it is simply a tool that you can use to have a higher probability trade. And trading is all about probabilities. So maybe your edge in trading can simply be bias. Maybe you only take trades that align with your bias and you find a higher probability win rate or success with that specific tool. And that is something I recommend everyone should do. But it is simply a recommendation. Now, how do I determine bias? So how do I know if the day is going to go higher or lower? How do I know if the session is going to go higher or lower? Two concepts I use. I use the power of three and order flow. Power of three confirms to me the days and the sessions that are going to be in that direction, and order flow will tell me what is going to happen. There are many ways to determine bias. You can look at premium and discount. You can simply use displacement. Maybe you see an aggressive displacement and that makes you bullish, for example. You can use concepts like internal to external range liquidity, which we've talked about. You can use market structure, which we talked about on this series as well. Changing the state of deliveries, liquidity sweeps, market structure shifts, breaker blocks, all that kind of stuff we've talked about in this series, all of which you can use to help determine a bias. Me personally, I'm using two concepts, power of three and order flow. And it's very simple, and I will teach it to you right now. But before I do that, there is something way more important than what I just said. You do not need a bias every single day. You cannot have a bias every single day. Because remember, this is a tool. You cannot abuse it. If you have a bias every single day and you force it every single day, then the probability of it aligning with a trade setup is going to be diminished. What you want to do is find the best day where the probability is so certain, or higher at least, not certain, obviously, there's no certainty, but if the probability is higher and you focus on those specific days, your trade setup will actually be higher probability. If you have a bias every single day on the daily chart and then you're like, oh, I'm aligning with my bias, that doesn't really mean much because your daily bias percentage is not going to be that accurate. But what if I told you, for example, I usually have around a 90% daily bias accuracy, but I don't have bias every single day. But when I do have a bias, it's very accurate. That way I know for a fact if I'm taking a setup aligning with my daily bias, my trade is that much higher probability of playing out. And again, it's all about edge and probability. So you cannot force it every time. Use it as a tool to increase probability. Do not abuse it. And you don't need bias every single day. You can get biased many ways, but I will teach you the methods of how I determine mine. Weekly power of 3. So what does this mean? Now, most of you watching this probably already know, but I will very briefly demonstrate and talk about how I use it to determine power of 3 and the daily bias. The idea is very simple. The goal here is to determine highs or lows that will be set in the week where we can trade the expansion after. So if we can find a high probability low, we can trade the expansion in the opposite direction if we're bullish, once the reversal is confirmed. This can often give you 1 to 3 days of high probability daily bias for a week. For example, this is what you're looking for. If we have manipulated below the weekly opening price, power of 3, and we get a CISD back above the opening price, we can trust that a low has formed in the market that can deliver a move higher. Remember, we're not trying to pick the lowest low or the highest high, but once we see this signature in price, we can anticipate that it's more likely to move higher at this point in time. Most of the time, this will form on a Tuesday or Wednesday, but obviously it can happen any day. Ideally, when it forms on a Tuesday or Wednesday, it's just that much more probable. Ever so slightly, but it happens. If we have manipulation above the weekly opening price, power of 3, and a CISD back below, we can trust that a high has formed because we manipulated higher, and that now we can anticipate a move lower. Again, this doesn't have to be the highest high or the lowest low. It's simply a tool for probabilities. If we have this signature in price, there is a better probability of moving lower at this point than higher. So we can trust that a move lower is to come, and most of the time this will form Tuesday or Wednesday, but it can happen any day. The goal here is to have a clear bias for the next day. So if we have a manipulation above the weekly open and then a CISD back, the next day will give clear bias. And I will give you an example of this. So just bear with me while I go through the teachings and we'll do examples of all of this, okay? So this is daily bias, weekly power of 3. The next thing we're going to look at, which is very simple, is order flow. We've talked about order flow on this channel before, many times. It is very simple. I'm looking at the daily chart and I'm simply asking myself, is order flow bullish or bearish? When this aligns with the power of 3, boom, that is my high probability daily bias. This happens usually at least once a week. Bullish order flow is respecting discount, disrespecting premium, pretty much an uptrend. And bearish order flow is disrespecting discount and respecting premium. Pretty much just a downtrend, right? It's pretty much that simple. So that's daily bias. I'm pairing weekly power of 3 with daily order flow. Now, what if there is neutral order flow or the power of 3 has not confirmed yet? Well, we don't have a daily bias. I will not use daily bias in my trading. So what do? Some people opt to not trade. Me personally, I rely on intraday bias. Now, what's the difference between using daily bias and intraday bias? Daily bias, usually you will see on days with higher probability expansions because you're trading on the daily chart expecting a daily move. Intraday, you don't need a bigger move. You can often catch a smaller move intraday, which can still yield good risk to reward and good high probability setups. It's simply you're not aligning with the higher time frame. It's more of what's going to happen right now. Now, when you're trading daily bias, ideally your intraday bias aligns, right? If your daily bias is bullish, but right now you're bearish, it doesn't mean much. You're going to have to wait, right? But the key here is very simple. Now, we're not trying to complicate things. If the daily bias is not clear, we will rely on intraday bias. Now, can you guess what we're going to be using? The exact same concepts. Instead of weekly power of 3, I'm looking at the daily power of 3. So if we manipulate below daily open, and I will give you examples, so just bear with me, but if we manipulate below the open of the daily candle and we get a CISD back above, I can trust that a low has formed that can deliver higher prices. If we have manipulation above the daily opening price and a CISD back below, I can trust that a high has formed that can deliver a move lower. The goal is to trade the expansion after. So very simple. Now, what would I pair this with for confirmation? Order flow, intraday. Primarily, I'll view this on the 15-minute chart because I can see everything on the 15-minute chart, but it doesn't really matter. Doesn't matter what time frame. You can do the 1 minute and zoom out. The 15-minute chart is very clean, so don't ask me which chart am I looking for my intraday order flow. It's the 15-minute. The goal here is to identify the order flow just like in the other example. I'm looking at the 15-minute chart and I want to see, are we bullish order flow or bearish? That is everything. That is how I do my buys. Now, let's go into some examples. So we'll do some daily bias examples where we talk about the power of 3 with daily order flow. And we'll do some intraday bias examples. We talk about daily power of 3 and intraday order flow. So I'm not going to do any cuts in this video. We're just going to go scratch. So hopefully it's easy to follow along. I apologize if there's any discrepancies, but let's just go to it. So this is to this week. Or I think last week, sorry. Anyways, this was very recent. You can see here, I marked out the opening price, and we had a opening right here around this price level. Now this is actually the 18 o'clock opening Eastern time, not midnight opening, but just for simplicity's sake, you can see the market opens here on Monday. We don't have any idea. There's really never going to be a daily bias on Monday unless very specific scenarios come, but we don't even have to get into that. But Monday's not going to have a daily bias. Tuesday, let's look very closely here. Tuesday takes out Monday's high and closes bearish, right? At this point in time, we can expect Wednesday to trade lower. Why is that the case? Because Tuesday took Monday's high and closed bearish. So if I was to zoom in here on what actually happened, we traded above the weekly opening price and we got a CISD back. Now, I think this actually looks like it happens on Wednesday, or we get really close, but nonetheless, the concept is the same. So I don't know if there's an SMT here. In this case, we just got really equal highs, but let's make it very simple. Once we form this high above the weekly opening price, which is this dotted line, we can be bearish for the rest of the day or the rest of the week, right? So in this case, Wednesday puts in a high. We get the change in the state of delivery. What time frame? Doesn't matter. As long as it goes below the opening price, I want to see that move going towards the opening price. I can trust shorts the next day. So which day are we going to be bearish and look for shorts? Well, we're going to look for shorts on Thursday and Friday. And as you can see, Thursday and Friday move lower because the power of 3 basically did this. So that would be an example of weekly power of 3. Let's do another example. So let's clear this up, and I'll do one more example of weekly power of 3. So let's do this example. To this example right here. So we have Friday. So this is 1 week of price action. This is Monday opening price right here. You can see we have a dotted line. Now, what happens here? Wednesday trades lower below the opening price and forms a low, right? So right here, it forms a low. The next day, once we see that it closes back above and we formed a low, we're bullish on the next day. How can we confirm? For example, let's go to the hourly chart. You can see Wednesday trades below that opening price. We get a CISD, just like I said in the PDF. Now, we're not going to be bullish on Wednesday. Now, you can try to predict this on the Wednesday, but you don't have to. What we need to do is be bullish on the next day. So on the Thursday and the Friday, you can see, and I'll move back to the daily here, we get a move higher. Now, look, we're not trying to predict the closing price. Notice that Thursday actually closed bearish. Doesn't matter. You still could have caught a move higher because the daily bias was bullish. Same thing with Friday. We get a move higher. So we get 2 days of high probability daily bias because of Wednesday putting in that low. Now that's the idea. Now let's talk about order flow. So why else would you want to be bullish for this given week, let's say? Well, order flow is clearly bullish. Why is order flow bullish? Well, we have an inversion fair value gap right here. Now, if you want to include the volume imbalance, we can just do it as so. So we're disrespecting premium. So as this price right here, right, we close above this, we get the inversion, the reinversion, right? That is what we call a reclaimed fair value gap. No, it's an inversion. It's acting as bullish. So closing back above, which we talked about in this series already, is signature of bullish order flow, right? And then we come back here and respect it. This is clearly bullish order flow. So we disrespect it as premium and we respect it as discount. So we can now anticipate that we have bullish order flow. On top of that, we have a bullish fair value gap right here. Well, do we respect it? Yeah. Can we see other signatures of bullish order flow? Well, we're respecting discount, right? So respecting discount and disrespecting premium. So you'd want to look to the left of the chart and see what could we potentially be disrespecting. And for example, you see we disrespected 50% of this bearish fair value gap. Is that a bearish sign or bullish sign? Well, that's bearish. Now we didn't inverse it. We're closing above a 50% means it's likely not to be respected, right? It's likely to inverse. So we have disrespecting premium and respecting discount, aligning with weekly power of 3. We have high probability daily buys for Thursday and Friday, and you see we ended up taking out that high. Very simple. So that's how you can use a weekly power of 3 and daily order flow. Now I'll see if I can give you guys another example. I don't think there's anything clear. This is when Trump was speaking. Again, I'm doing this live. I don't like to cherry pick. Let's see if we can just go back to live market thing, because we had daily bias a couple of these days. So for example, this is an example where Friday we had a this is a great example here because we were taking longs. So if you guys have been paying attention in the live streams, we took 2 longs this week and they were both winners. Let's talk about why I was bullish. So here we have Monday. Monday trades higher. Now I'm not necessarily anticipating Monday to form the low of the week, but Monday forms a low below the weekly opening price and gives us a CISD. So this gives me a high probability idea that we are going to trade higher. So we respect discount. We formed a bullish order block here. So we clearly have bullish order flow. We also have the inversion of, like for example, if you look at the left here, we have this inversion fair value gap, right? So getting back above that is a sign of bullish order flow. We had a bearish order block here in which we also disrespected mean threshold. So you're seeing those signatures of bullish order flow. But if you look at the very near price action, it's very simple. We have a bullish order block respected and the bullish fair value gap respected. So clearly bullish order flow, right? Now, if we're looking for higher prices because order flow is bullish, we're looking for that weekly power of 3 signature. So Monday trades lower below the opening price, and I'm gonna go back here on the daily so I can mark out the opening price. So bear with me for one moment. But for the most part, opening price would be right here. Let's just go back to the hourly for simplicity's sake. This is the opening price. We do trade below it in London session. We do get the CISD back above. The CISD would be right there. And you can see, right? So the CISD would be 1, 2, 3 down close candles into the fair value gap below opening price. Trade back into it, expand. Now at this point, we can expect this high to get taken. So I've been taking longs on, now I don't know if we took a long Monday or we took a long today. I don't remember when the last one, but we took 2 longs in this price action on the premise that Monday put in a low below the opening price and gave us a CISD higher. This may not be the lowest low of the week. I don't need to know that. What I need to know is because we came below the weekly open and we put in a low and it got a CISD above on a daily time frame where order flow is already bullish, we're likely to deliver higher. Do I need to know how high? No, but my bias is still bullish. So if I can take higher probability longs, that is a great potential trade idea. And that's simply how we're using the daily bias. Weekly power of 3 and order flow. For example, I'll give you guys one more example. The order flow here is also bullish, and we can do one more example. For example, this sell-off right here is pretty nice. So right here, we have a bullish fair value gap. It gets inversed. That's sign of bearish order flow, right? Correct. This is Monday opening price. Monday, so let me clear this up so you guys can see very nice and clear. So we have bearish order flow because we're disrespecting discount and we're respecting premium. So this is Monday's opening price right here. Monday opens, Wednesday trades up all the way into there and then trades lower, forming the daily bearish order block. Obviously here we have a high that we're expecting to be held. This is right here. We move up above the weekly open and we get a CISD back. So this gives us high probability daily bias for Thursday and Friday, right? And you can see Thursday and Friday trades lower. Weekly power of 3 paired with daily order flow equals high probability daily bias for usually 1 to 3 days in a week. Very, very simple. That's what we're going to talk about daily bias. Now let's implement the exact same concepts for intraday bias. And we will talk about this because I also took a trade today based off of that premise. So, very, very simple idea here. Today, we took a long because that daily order flow has been bullish. But aside from that, we're looking at the intraday chart right now. So let's mark out the daily opening price, which would be right here. So at 9:30 open, we come and we trade below the opening price, taking out sell side liquidity. That would be right here. And I took long today, like I said. So if we can put in a low here and get the CISD back above, we can trust that this low can deliver a move higher. That's as simple as what we're doing. What ends up happening? Well, we trade below the opening price. Now, if you took a long in pre-market, you could have used that same concept, right? Remember, we're not trying to pick the bottom of the day. This is a low below the opening price that delivered a move higher. So you can be bullish intraday, and you could have potentially caught this move, right? For example, if you use the CISD. But no one said this low is going to be safe. I'm not talking about highs and lows that are not going to be taken. I'm talking about high probability moves that are likely to happen because we put in a low below the opening price and we got a change in the state of delivery going higher. So for me, I took a long, it was this long in 1050 macro, which we seem to cover in almost every video at this point. You guys can see how important the macros are. But the idea is very simple. We took out sell side, we took a low below the opening price, got a CISD back above. Therefore, we can expect right now, price is likely to expand. And that's all we're doing. Let's do one more example. And I'll give you guys an example from Tuesday, which is, I don't know if we took a trade Tuesday or what it was, but it's very, very simple. I was bullish on Tuesday nonetheless. So what happened on Tuesday? Well, this price level right here, where my cursor is midnight opening price. London session, we manipulate below the opening price. We put in a low. Therefore, if we get a change in the state of delivery, we can expect a move higher. This would be your change in the state of delivery right there, which I taught on this channel how to perform, right? So at this point, we put in a low and we're expecting a move higher. Paired with the daily time, remember, we're using intraday bias here. So I'm looking at objectives like here, maybe here or here, and this is the simple concept. Now, on top of that, order flow is clearly bullish. Why is it bullish? Well, we're making higher highs and lower lows. You can use that. But if you're looking at the exact PD arrays, we're simply taking out lows, wicking, and then going higher. We're respecting order blocks. We're disrespecting the left side of the curve, meaning we're getting inversion fair value gaps here. We're getting inversion fair value gaps here. And you can see price inverses and respects. So it's obviously bullish order flow. The daily power of 3 says higher. Everything says higher. There is no reason to look for shorts. Now, I was even on Livestream and people were asking me, we took out the highs. If we're looking for shorts, if we're looking for shorts. No, I don't trade like that, right? The daily power of 3 says higher. The daily order flow, intraday order flow, says higher. We're also on the daily chart where we don't have a clear weekly power of 3, but we do have clear daily order flow. So there's really no reason for me personally to look for shorts. It does not make sense. And that's pretty much the premise of trading with bias. Let's do one more example. I don't know what's going to happen here. Now, I think this day just trades. Here's a great example. Now, this is not the best example because we don't have manipulation below the opening price. But what we do have is very clear bullish order flow. Now, we don't have manipulation below the midnight opening price, but we do have manipulation below the 9:30 opening price. So you can see the opening price right here. We trade lower, we put in a low, we get a change in the state of delivery. Now we can expect potentially a move higher, which we get. So you would be bullish going into this session because of what happened here. And that's a very simple premise. So the daily power of 3 in this case would not be used. It would be the morning power of 3 because the daily power of 3 is simply displaced by this insane candle. I think this was Trump tweeted something, or I don't know what it was. But nonetheless, we have obvious intraday order flow that is bullish. Like I said, this candle. And then we have the idea that we did become below an opening price. Now, ideally, again, it becomes below the midnight opening price. So if you wanted to have no bias on this day, that would be fine. It wouldn't be like anything, absurd. That's totally fine. And here's another example where we have a move below the opening price. So opening price is right here where my cursor is. Trade lower. We get the CISD. You're starting to get the picture. Lower below the opening price. CISD higher. We're bullish on the day in terms of daily power of 3 and intraday order flow. How do we know order flow is bullish? Well, you can simply see it. We're disrespecting the left side. We're respecting the right side. For example, inversion fair value gap right here. We disrespected. Bullish fair value gap right here. We respected. That's a pretty clear bullish order flow. So simply using those simple concepts of power of 3, manipulation above and below opening price, putting in those highs and lows that lead to a CISD, and then finally trading the session after, expecting a move higher or lower, is a high probability way to determine daily bias and a high probability way to determine intraday bias. So that is all for me for this video. I hope you guys learned a thing or two about bias There are many ways to determine daily bias, and there are many videos on YouTube on how to determine daily bias. It is simply up to you on how you want to do it. I just taught you guys how I do it, and I do it every single day on Livestream the exact same way, and it's been doing wonders for me for a very long time, so I'm going to stick with this method. But you can do it however you want. Hopefully, the main takeaway of this video is you guys can start implementing daily bias and intraday bias into your trading because it'll unlock higher probability trades. When your setup aligns with your bias, you have a higher probability trade idea, and that's what you want to do. It's all about probabilities. You want to take the best probability trades, and whether the outcome is win or lose, it doesn't matter because the probabilities were stacked in your favor. So as long as you keep trading with the probability stacked in your favor, you will see the consistent results that you are looking for. I'm going to be signing out, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.